Hey guys, tonight we begin with clouds tumbling over Olympus, not the gentle cotton fluff kind, but thick, bruised thunderclouds sagging like wet wool over marble columns and golden gates. The gods are restless, but none more so than you, Queen Hera. The scent of ozone curls through the air like a warning, and your sandals press against the slick stone, tracing the same path you've walked 1,000 times. Something has changed, and you feel it in the marrow of your bones. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And if you're listening from some faraway place, drop your city and your local time in the comments. I'd love to see how far this myth has traveled. Now dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The palace is unusually quiet for a day like this. Zeus has vanished again, probably as a bird or a bull or a golden mist. You stop trying to guess which form he takes when he's lying.
But what's different tonight is not Zeus's absence. It's the weight in your chest, the vow you made long before Olympus ever had a throne. And somehow you know that vow will be tested before the thunder fades. Lightning forks through the sky and you don't flinch. You've lived long enough to recognize that gods aren't the ones who make thunder. Vows do. You retreat into your private quarters, the only place in Olympus where the echoes of worship don't follow you. Here, past the 7 ivory pillars and the curtain woven with night-blooming jasmine, you unpin your golden diadem and let your hair fall loose. The mirror in front of you shows a face both eternal and tired eyes like polished amber lips pressed in patience, too often mistaken for peace. On the sill lies a scrap of papyrus, a list of invitations to yet another mortal wedding, one you're supposed to bless. As if your approval means anything anymore, you burn the scroll without even reading the names. The vow. You made it before the Titans fell, before Zeus, before the Olympians crowned themselves with victory and marble. It was on Mount Thornax when the world was all shadows and smoke, and you stood alone under a crooked cedar tree. You swore an oath with no witnesses, just the mountain winds and a single drop of your own blood pressed into the stone. You'd vowed never to allow betrayal to make you cruel, never to become like the fates who snipped threads without mercy, never to use love as a weapon. And yet, here you are decades later wearing cruelty like a perfume, sharp, invisible, lingering. The marble beneath your feet hums a low thrum you recognize as divine tension. Somewhere below Hephaestus is forging. Somewhere far above the muses are whispering half out of tune. You step out onto the overlook where all Olympus lies sprawled like a sleeping beast. The wind bites, but you let it. A little discomfort keeps you awake. Your Majesty, a voice calls from behind you.
It's Iris, your trusted messenger. She's barefoot, soaked from rain and holding a laurel-wrapped scroll. There's something you need to see. You take the scroll and turn your back on the storm. The seal isn't Zeus's, it's older. A spiral flame scorched into wax, the sign of the river pact. You feel your stomach coil. You haven't heard from them in centuries. The river pact was forged long before Olympus, when the world was still divided by chaotic waters and ancient spirits. You made a deal with them in secret. And part of that deal was the vow, the very vow clawing its way back into your mind like a serpent shaking off its winter sleep. Historians still argue whether the river pact was symbolic or literal, whether the gods can truly be bound by old agreements once the world has changed. But you've never dared to test it. You unroll the scroll. No ink, just a single line burned into the fibers. The vow ripens. The moment nears. Your throat tightens.
You fold the scroll motion iris away and sit down on the edge of your chaise like someone who just realized the chandelier above them is made of knives. The vow is coming due. You don't know how or why, but the rivers remember and they never forgive. You close your eyes and try to breathe, but it's hard to inhale when history is knocking. You remember the exact color of the sky that day back when clouds still feared the gods and mountains were more myth than matter. Mount Thornax wasn't yet known by name. It was just the place where winds break. You'd climbed it a lone cloak, torn by bramble thorns and feet slick with blood long before you were Hera, Queen of Olympus. Back then you were simply a daughter of Rhea, one of many swallowed by obscurity and overshadowed by louder siblings. The vow you made was not for show. No temples bore witness, no muses sang verses about it later. You had crouched by a weather-beaten stone altar carved long before even Kronos walked upright, and whispered the words only you would ever remember. I vow to guard what love remains without turning it into cruelty. You'd cut your palm with a shard of obsidian and let the blood soak into the cracks of the altar. The mountain groaned once, as if acknowledging your oath, and then silence. A sacred, terrifying silence that felt more binding than any crown or marriage you'd wear later. You rise now from your thoughts and from your seat. The scroll still burns faintly in your hand. It didn't disintegrate fully in the brazier old magic, that the kind that lingers like regret. And that's when your memory walks you straight into another echo of the past. The day Zeus tricked you. Oh, he was clever. Not in the way scholars admire, but in the way pickpockets are. He disguised himself as a wounded cuckoo bird and collapsed outside your grove during the first spring rains.
Of course you rushed to help it, who wouldn't, but when you cradled it to your chest, he shifted. Wings to arms, beak to lips, feathers to skin. Classic Zeus. You'd screamed, of course, pushed him away. But then he did something rare. He begged. The king of the gods, not yet crowned on his knees, his voice trembled. He said he needed you. Not your body, not your status, but your fire, your ability to tame chaos without becoming it. And somehow, you believed him. Historians still argue whether Hera ever truly loved Zeus. Some say yes, that divine love burns slow but steady. Others say no, that she was shackled by duty and deception. The truth, it flickers between those ideas like lightning hiding inside a cloud. You didn't love Zeus, the trickster, but you thought you might love the man beneath the god. That's what made the trick so cruel. The wedding was held on the plains of Crete, beneath a canopy of golden myrtle branches. All the gods came, even those who hated him.
The Moirai spun a ribbon from stars and wound it around your joined hands. Zeus promised fidelity with the same mouth he'd later used to swear dozens of falsehoods. You meanwhile remained silent. Not because you had nothing to say, but because you still held your vow in your chest like a shard of sacred iron. You'd marry him, yes, but you would not let betrayal shape you. That's how the vow changed shape. It became a test, repeated every time he lied, every time he touched another, every time you were expected to smile as some nymph was crowned queen for a day and sent scurrying home with swollen ankles and a half-mortal child in her arms. You walk now past a hallway where frescoes of that wedding still glow with divine pigment. You almost laugh. Look at that, there's you, smiling at a man you didn't yet know would unravel you thread by golden thread. Good morning, Hera. A passing nymph chirps. "It's raining," you mutter. She blinks. "Yes, my queen, but not inside." You don't bother explaining. There are storms that walls cannot keep out. You head down toward the lowest levels of Olympus. Most gods don't even remember this corridor exists. But you do. Every vow has a vault, a place where memory is stored in stone. Down here, the walls are etched, not with victories or battles, but with decisions the kind gods rarely admit to making. And there at the end of the passage lies it, the Thornax tablet. Carved from the same mountain where you made the vow, it pulses faintly with divine energy. Your name is etched at the top, not in letters, but in essence. Below it, your vow curls across the stone, like ivy, still intact, still binding. But tonight, something's changed. A crack, thin hairline, but there. The vow is weakening, not because you broke it, not yet, but because something in the world is calling for its end. And it's coming. You press your palm to the tablet and it's warm. Too warm, you don't cry, you haven't cried in centuries. But you do whisper something, not yet, because part of you still believes that vows matter. Even to gods who lie, the worst part isn't that Zeus lied. It's how the world expected you to smile through it, wear betrayal like a bejeweled shawl, and call it divine patience. You remember the first time you saw him revel in your humiliation, publicly, shamelessly wrapped in laughter and lightning. It was supposed to be a celebration, the birth of Hephaestus, a child formed not through union but through divine will, yours alone. You wanted no part of Zeus in this one, just you, just your power, a creation entirely your own. But when he was born, the court fell silent. Hephaestus, little god of fire and forge, arrived with legs twisted like grapevines and a face half formed by fire and pride. You saw the others flinch. Even Zeus took a step back. And before you could shield your son, the whispers began malformed, defective, unworthy. Zeus never said the words. He didn't have to. His silence was enough. And so, with the whole court watching, he took the child, your child, and hurled him off Olympus. You remember the sound more than the sight. The silence before impact. The wind screaming, the crash below. Historians still argue whether that moment was cruelty or necessity, whether Zeus acted out of divine logic or mortal spite. You know the answer, but you've never said it aloud. He fell for 9 days. Mortals would later craft myths about how Hephaestus survived, nursed by sea nymphs, taught to forge by underwater flame. But none of them capture the raw truth that a mother watched her child be discarded like a flawed gem, and did nothing, because to act would have meant breaking the vow. That day the vow tightened its grip on you like a noose made of silk. You didn't become cruel, but you became cold. Still Hephaestus lived, scarred, brilliant, bitter, and he never forgave either of you, not Zeus for the throw, not you for the silence. Years later he would return, dragging his forge behind him like a wound, and gift you something strange, a golden throne that trapped anyone who sat in it. He tricked Zeus into sitting on it. For days your thunderous husband was stuck red-faced and furious until you intervened. How ironic that the son you didn't protect became the only one clever enough to chain a king. And yet, that moment at the feast, it was worse, because it was laughter. The gods gathered again, lounging in their inlaid ivory seats, sipping nectar, arguing about constellations and poetry. And then came the prank. Hephaestus, still harboring rage beneath his hammer hands, gifted a chair to Hera, the throne of thrones he called it. But the moment you sat, you were seized, bound by invisible tendrils of divine craftsmanship, unable to rise, unable to leave. The court roared with laughter, Zeus most of all. He didn't stop it, not at first. His booming chuckles filled the dome, while you sat there, goddess queen, trapped like a beetle in honey. Only when Hephaestus relented under pressure was the throne undone, but the damage eternal. That night you walked the halls of Olympus with your fists clenched. Every mosaic of Zeus that lined the corridors felt like a taunt. Every servant's bowed head a reminder of your cage. And as you lay in your bed, pillowed in gold and woven silk, you heard it again, the vow, whispering, "Don't let this shape you." And so you didn't strike, not directly, not yet. But you began to build the garden, not for beauty, for control. The garden of the Hesperides, hidden beyond mortal maps, tended by immortal daughters filled with golden apples that conferred immortality. It was your sanctuary, a place where even Zeus feared to tread. You planted more than trees there. You buried rage, buried secrets, and one apple in particular, one not born from nature but from grief, gleamed with a curse no god has dared to bite since. Some say it was the same apple Eris, goddess of strife, would later use to begin the Trojan War. You've never confirmed that. But you know what it means to plant a seed and wait for someone else to call it fate. And yet despite all this, despite the betrayal, the mockery, the silence, you hadn't broken the vow. Not truly. You still wore the crown, still guarded Olympus, still believed that love, however flawed, deserved protection. But tonight the wind shifts again, the river pact stirs, and you feel the vow unraveling thread by invisible thread. Somewhere deep below Hephaestus stokes his forge, and somewhere high above the clouds begin to whisper your name. The Hesperides do not speak unless spoken to. That's one of the rules, your rules. And yet as you approach the edge of the garden, they're already waiting. You glide through the veil of mist that separates Olympus from this hidden grove, your feet brushing against dew-damp grass that glows faintly with stardust. The air smells of citrus and distant rain. It is always dusk here, always still like the breath before a confession. 3 daughters of twilight, Aegle, Erythea, and Hesperia, stand beneath the central apple tree, the one with bark that hums like distant thunder and roots coiled around ancient bones. "Something's wrong," Aegle murmurs. Her voice is like wind moving through harp strings. "We heard the rivers," Erythea adds, not meeting your eyes. You step closer, the hem of your robe, dragging whispers behind it. What did they say? Hesperia, the youngest, looks up. Her gold-flecked eyes are wide. They said the vow is ripening, that it cannot hold forever. You swallow the taste, bitter and metallic. It echoes what the scroll warned. The river pact was more than symbolism. It was alive, a current beneath the skin of the world. And now it's rising. You glance at the tree, the apple of strife. You planted it not in malice, but in memory. A fruit born of pain, ripened by patience. Not even you know what would happen if it were picked. Guard it, you whisper, with silence, with everything. The Hesperides nod. No one dares pluck from this tree, not even the gods, not again. You turn to leave, but pause. You'll hear more soon, you add quietly. Not from me, from a voice we once silenced. They don't ask who, they already know. Back through the mist, back toward Olympus, and the wind carries old names. One in particular, Io, you remember the night well. a girl not yet woman whom Zeus desired. And as usual he pursued, but unlike the others, Io didn't fall willingly. She was curious, cautious, and worst of all, bright. Zeus took her in the form of a cloud. Always clouds, always storms.
And when you discovered it, you did not punish him. That would have been too easy, too obvious. You punished her, turned her into a heifer, stripped her voice, gave her eyes that wept endlessly. It wasn't justice, it was hurt masquerading as power. Historians still argue whether you meant to be cruel or if you simply didn't know how else to respond. Some believe it was calculated wrath, others a moment of unraveling. The truth, you weren't sure yourself. You assigned Argus to watch over her, the 100-eyed giant. Not because he was the best guardian, but because you needed someone who never slept. So Io would never escape, so you wouldn't have to face her eyes in a mirror. But Hermes, ever loyal to Zeus, found her anyway. With a flute and a whisper, he lulled Argus to sleep and killed him. When you found the giant's lifeless body, you plucked every one of his eyes and placed them on the tail of a peacock. Not for vanity, for remembrance, for shame.
And then you sent a gadfly after Io, forcing her to wander aimless and tormented, not because she deserved it, but because you didn't know how to forgive. Even now your temples are still adorned with images of that peacock, beautiful, proud, and watching everything, a creature made of a mistake you refuse to forget. But Io's story didn't end in suffering. She wandered until the gods grew tired of vengeance, until Zeus, perhaps out of guilt, freed her. She returned to human form, gave birth to children, became a queen among mortals, and you pretended not to care. But that seed, that feeling you buried still writhes, not guilt, not exactly, recognition. You saw in Io what you once were, young defiant caught in the chaos of gods who never ask permission. Now all these years later you wonder if the vow had already cracked back then, would you have spared her? The rain returns as you reach Olympus, again this time softer. The halls glisten. Thunder retreats like a child scolded. And yet something stirs, a low hum, not from the sky, but from the marble beneath your feet, a vibration that pulls you toward the south wing, toward the hall of forgotten deals. Few gods visit that place. It's where broken promises go to sleep, but your feet move as if remembering something your mind won't yet admit. You pass relics, an unbroken arrow once aimed at Apollo, a bowl never emptied by Dionysus, a harp that never played for Orpheus, and at the center of it all a basin, still, black, reflective. You lean over it. The surface doesn't show your face, it shows a river. And in that river, Io, now aged, crowned her eyes, meeting yours through ripples. No accusation, just understanding. You step back. The vow pulses again, louder. The hall of forgotten deals rarely speaks. It listens, absorbs, holds the weight of every oath, left hanging every contract abandoned like a child in a thunderstorm. You walk its edge, slowly trailing your fingers along the basin's rim, still cold despite the visions it holds. Behind you, a draught swirls, not wind exactly, more like memory brushing past your shoulder. And there it is again, that name, whispered not in anger, but in invitation. Hephaestus, your son exiled and returned, scarred by skyfall, hardened in flame, now king of craft and isolation, the only god who never cared for Olympus's games, the one who never asked for your forgiveness. You follow the whisper, ascending through side corridors lit by torches that never flicker. down into the bowels of the palace where soot stains gold and smoke veils everything in ambiguity. His forge lives beneath Olympus like a second heart. The sound hits you first metal on metal, rhythmic and defiant. Each strike echoes like a hymn of resilience. As you enter, you're met with a heat that doesn't burn but reminds. He doesn't turn, doesn't pause.
You stand in the doorway of your own son's realm, suddenly uncertain. Hephaestus, you say softly. He keeps hammering. It's time. Still he hammers. You know why I'm here. Finally he stops. The silence rings louder than the forge. He sets down his hammer with ceremonial grace and turns, face shadowed by the glow of molten bronze. You've come for the chain, he says. You nod. He gestures toward the back wall where something hangs beneath a dark cloth, tall, narrow, and humming with power. I made it the day you asked me to, he mutters, wiping his hands on a charred cloth. Before you told me what it was for, you stepped closer to the cloth. It's not for war. No, he says flatly, it's for vows. He watches you, and you can feel the weight of everything he doesn't say, that you never defended him, that you watched him fall, that you let the laughter echo. I won't ask for forgiveness, you say quietly. Good, he replies. I'm not offering it.
You pull the cloth away. There it is, a chain not of links but of stories, forged from promises broken and kept. It glows faintly, not gold or silver, but something older, something like consequence. It can't bind a god, you murmur. It doesn't have to, he says, it just has to remind them. He steps away back to his forge. The conversation is over, but before you leave, he adds, be careful with it. If you're wrong, it'll bind you instead. You nod, take the chain, and feel it thrum in your hand like a live thing. Warm, waiting. Historians still debate whether the chain of remembrance was real. Some say it was metaphorical, a symbol of accountability. Others insist it existed, crafted by Hephaestus himself to contain divine will. Either way, it was never used, until now. You return to your chambers beneath the quiet hush of Olympus's upper halls. The storm has passed, but the air feels wrong too, still too expectant. You wrap the chain in silk and place it beneath your pillow, just in case. Sleep eludes you, so you sit by the window and watch the stars. Somewhere below the mortal world continues oblivious to divine tensions and ancient vows. Fields are being planted. Children are being born. Lovers argue and make up beneath olive trees. And still the rivers whisper. The vow, the moment. It's not just about Zeus anymore. You begin to wonder, did the vow shape you or trap you? You wanted not to become cruel, not to let love twist into revenge. But did that mean you let too much slide? Let the world believe your silence meant consent. You think of the mortal women Semele, Leto, each branded by the consequences of Zeus's desire and your own inaction. You think of your power not as lightning or war, but something more dangerous, endurance. And you realize not for the first time that endurance can be a form of complicity. The vow is clear. It was supposed to protect love. But tonight, you begin to ask, whose love? And at what cost? The stars offer no answer, only silence. And the weight of what comes next. The chain hums beneath your pillow like a heartbeat you're trying to forget. You don't sleep. Queens rarely do, not truly. You let your eyes close, but your mind paces like a lion in a glass cage. When dawn bleeds into Olympus golden and a little smug, you're already dressed. Not in your usual ceremonial garb today. You wear simplicity linen robe, hair, unpinned sandals that do not announce your presence. You are not Hera the queen, you are Hera the vow keeper, or vow breaker. The distinction you suspect is about to blur. Your destination is not Olympus's throne room, not yet. It's a cliffside shrine carved into the spine of Mount Helicon, known only to three beings: yourself, the river gods, and a creature older than memory, Lulled. You arrive just as sunlight brushes the mosaic stone path. The wind here is different, older, more deliberate, as if it remembers who you were before you wore a crown. And there he waits. Ladon, the serpent guardian of the Hesperides, coils loosely around the shrine's outer wall. He lifts his massive head as you approach. His eyes are opals, shifting with the colors of all the lies Olympus has told. Queen, he hisses, not out of fear, but habit. You incline your head. Ladon, you come to unbind the vow. You hesitate. I come to ask if I must. He chuckles, and it is the sound of dry leaves caught in ancient breath. You already know the answer. That's why you brought the chain. You do not deny it. Ladon shifts, revealing the shrine's door, arched, vine-wrapped, carved with sigils of oaths too old to pronounce. Within the chamber, 3 pools await. They reflect not your face, but your past. In the first, a younger you, standing beside Zeus, crowned and cloaked. Your smile strained your fingers, curled into the edge of your robe. In the second, a mortal girl kneeling beside a cow with human eyes, Io before the fly, before the exile. In the third, yourself again, silent, unmoved, as Hephaestus is cast from the heavens. You stand before them like a penitent goddess, because you are. Why these memories, you ask? Ladon doesn't answer. The pools do. Each flickers, replaying the moments, slow, cruel, detailed. Historians still argue about the purpose of divine shrines like this. Some claim they were used for ritual purification. Others believe they were trials, places where gods were forced to face the truth without illusion. You know better. These places weren't for atonement, they were for decision. And you've arrived at yours. You kneel, an unfamiliar posture, stiff in its humility. The floor is cool beneath your knees. You take the chain from your robe, unwind its shimmering length, and lower it into the third pool. The moment you do, the surface reacts. Fire bursts up, not burning, but illuminating, and the water clears. You see Hephaestus in the forge alone, building things no one will ever thank him for. He glances over his shoulder toward where he imagines Olympus stands and says to no one, would she have caught me if she could? The pool swirls. You can't speak. You can't answer. But in that moment, the chain splits, not breaks, divides. One half coils around your wrist, warm. The other half sinks into the pool and disappears. The vow has been halved, not broken, but no longer whole. You rise, heart thrumming with guilt and clarity. You cannot be only the queen who endures. You must also be the queen who chooses. The shrine door swings open without touch. Ladon watches you with something like curiosity. Was it worth it? He asks. You meet his gaze. I don't know yet, and maybe you never will. But as you step back onto the path, the wind carries something unexpected. Laughter, not cruel, not mocking.
A child's. Far below, in a mortal village, a boy chases a lamb through an olive grove. The world continues. The stars do not fall. The rivers have not swallowed Olympus, not yet. But something has shifted, and it started with a vow. You press your fingers to the warm imprint on your wrist, a reminder, not of failure, of choice. By the time you return to Olympus, something in the palace feels different. Not physically, no cracks in the marble, no overturned urns or missing thrones, but emotionally, atmospherically, as if Olympus itself has tilted slightly on its axis. As if the air, sensing your choice, has begun to ask quieter questions. You walk through the central corridor, past the Hall of Seasons, where Persephone's absence lingers in the scent of drying pomegranates. The gods you pass nod in greeting, but their eyes glance at your wrist, where the faint shimmer of the divided chain still clings like a tattoo of molten light. No one dares ask. Not yet.
You find Zeus, of course, where he always returns when he tires of mortal games, in the amphitheatre of clouds perched on his throne, of thunder flicking bolts into the mist like a bored child skipping stones. He doesn't notice your approach. You wait, because you've learned that the silence before confrontation often matters more than the words themselves. He glances over his shoulder casual. Back from scolding the wind, you smile tightly. Back from remembering, that gets his attention. Zeus shifts, sets the bolt aside and leans back, remembering what exactly my vow. He exhales through his nose. Which one you've made so many? You step forward. The one I made before you, before the thrones, before the muses had names. A pause. The kind that glows with static. He studies you, not the face you show the court, but the one behind it. The one with tired eyes and the strength to outlast the sky. You've changed, he says, not unkindly. No, you reply, I've chosen. He gestures toward the heavens, sprawling and dramatic. Everything we are, this was built on vows. You break one, the others shake. Then let them shake. It's not defiance, it's permission. Historians still debate the nature of divine power, whether it stems from strength, from worship, or from agreement among gods. But there's a fourth kind choice. The kind that comes when a god decides that the truth matters more than the structure built to contain it. I'm not here to punish you, you add softly. Zeus raises an eyebrow. That'd be a twist. I'm here to ask you a question. He smirks. Only one you step closer until the mist gathers at your ankles like nervous servants. Why, her Zeus doesn't pretend not to understand. He sighs and leans forward, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Io, he says. You nod, he shrugs. She was gentle, kind, curious. She asked questions, real ones, not about me, about everything, and you answered. For a time.
And when she said no, he flinches, just barely. Then I turned into something she couldn't say no to. You exhale through your teeth. I see. He watches you. Do you hate me for it? You meet his eyes? No, you say. I hate that I let myself become part of the punishment. He looks away. For once, the king of the gods has no thunder in his pockets. No clever retort. I'm trying, he mutters after a moment, to be better. You don't reply. You're not here for promises. You're here for truths. And you ask. Zeus sighs. She's safe, happy even. She rules with quiet grace. Her children worship the moon, not me. You nod. Then you offer your wrist, the half chain glowing faintly. I broke it, you say. Zeus's eyes widen. You, Hera, you don't. I had to. For her, for Hephaestus, for myself. The words hover, heavier than lightning. Zeus says nothing, but slowly, carefully he reaches out and touches the chain, and it accepts him, just for a moment.
Not to bind, to remind. When he pulls back, there's no thunderclap, no explosion of divine consequence, only stillness. Maybe the world doesn't end when gods make different choices. Maybe it begins. You turn and leave him in the mist. He doesn't follow, but neither does he throw lightning after you. You return to your chambers, hand trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer relief of having said it. That night you sit alone, not in silence, in peace, and for the first time in memory, you sleep. Dreams come, but not as you expect. No visions of Olympus or its polished lies, no echoing footsteps in marble corridors or whispered names on the wind. Instead, your mind drifts to water, soft moonlit water, curling like ribbon through a dark field. And beside that water, a figure stands. It's her. Io, but not the trembling heifer you once cursed. No, this is Io the queen. Her shoulders draped in linen that glows like starlight, her hair crowned with olive leaves, and her eyes no longer cry. "You remembered," she says softly. "You blink? This is a dream. Most things worth hearing are," she replies. The river babbles behind her, a lullaby sung in no language, and every language. Frogs croak somewhere unseen. A night bird calls out lonely but bold. "I didn't know how to fix it," you say, your voice small and unsure in this place without architecture. "You weren't supposed to," Io replies. "Some wounds are not for healing, only for holding." The sky above you cracks open slightly, not with lightning, but with stars, tumbling closer as if eavesdropping on your admission. "I'm sorry," you whisper. She smiles, and it's not the smile of someone who's won. It's the smile of someone who understands. "You're not cruel, Hera. You're just tired of holding still." You look down, and there in your hand is the chain again, but softer now, more like a vine than a shackle. It wraps itself around your fingers like ivy seeking sunlight. "What happens now?" you ask. Io looks up, not at the sky, but towards something deeper, the kind of direction mortals never think to search. "That depends. Do you still believe in oaths?" You think for a long time. "I believe in the people I made them to." She nods. "Then maybe they can be remade." The dream doesn't end, it just fades, like mist rolling back into trees. You wake slowly, your limbs heavy as though sleep has draped you in velvet and doesn't quite want to let go. But Olympus waits, and Olympus, as usual, is impatient. There's a commotion in the lower courts, nymphs running dryads muttering in hushed tones. Something's happened. You pull your robe tighter and descend the stairs like fog curling through columns.
At the foot of the golden stairway stands Iris, eyes wide and robe damp with the sweat of urgent flight. "It's her," she gasps. "Io, she's coming to Olympus. You stare." "That's impossible," you murmur. "She swore never to return. She comes not in anger," Iris adds quickly. "She comes with a gift." "Well, that's even worse." You make your way to the outer gates, where the muses have gathered, not singing, not reciting, just standing, waiting. That's when you see her. Not a dream, not a memory. Flesh and blood and regal stillness. She wears no jewelry, carries no weapon. Her crown is made of reeds and silver, and in her arms a child. Historians still argue whether this meeting between Hera and Io ever occurred. Some claim it was myth, layered upon myth, a fable to teach forgiveness to gods too full of wrath. Others swear it was the day Olympus began to fracture, not from war, but from something more terrifying understanding. You approach, slow and deliberate.
Io bows, not deeply, but enough. "I come not as a queen," she says, "but as a mother." The child in her arms stirs. You lean closer, and your breath catches. The child's eyes are like yours, not in shape, but in knowing, in the burden of memory too large for a single lifetime. "Who you begin?" "He is descended from both of us," Io says. "From you who cursed me, and from me who forgave you." You stagger slightly. The weight of that paradox settles in your bones like frost. "I had to come," she adds. because your vow, it's part of him now. You look at the child. He does not cry. He does not blink. He simply watches you as if waiting for your choice. You do not speak for a long time. Then you reach out and touch his cheek. The chain around your wrist dissolves. The vow, it seems, is no longer yours alone. You carry the child through Olympus, not as a trophy, nor as a penance, but as something new, a bridge. Small, soft, infinitely curious, he peers out from your arms with the calm of someone who's been here before, even if his body is still warm with the scent of newness. The other gods watch from balconies and cloud banks. They do not laugh, they do not question. Even Dionysus, ever full of commentary, stays quiet. Perhaps it is the child, or perhaps it's the fact that you are not wearing your crown. You enter the grand hall of echoes where decisions that shape civilizations have been made, and you set him down gently on the cool marble floor. He doesn't cry. He walks straight toward the central dais, little footsteps echoing like thunder, softened by moss. Zeus is already there. He stares at the child, then at you. "I suppose this is your answer," he says. You nod. It's our answer. The boy places a hand on the dais.
Instantly, the silver inscriptions that line its edges flare with light, ancient contracts, forgotten pacts, even the original divisions of sky, sea, and underworld. He shouldn't be able to do this, and yet he does. Who is he? Zeus asks, stepping closer. Io speaks from the archway. He is a child born of a vow, half forgiven, half remembered. You add, he is the consequence we never named, and the hope we never dared to expect. There's a pause, the kind that echoes louder than any proclamation, the kind that history bookmarks with trembling fingers. The child turns to you, reaches up, takes your hand and speaks just one word, peace. No one laughs, no one breathes. The word lingers in the hall, pressing itself into every wall, every mosaic, every god's rib cage. It is not a demand, it is a possibility. Historians still debate whether this moment marked a shift in divine governance.
Some argue it was a symbolic act, a myth, to explain a century of reduced warfare among the gods. Others claim the child became something more, a hidden mediator whispered about in dreams and divinations, a secret guardian of oaths. But you remember it clearly because it was the first time you were the one forgiven. You kneel beside the boy, brush a curl from his brow. Do you know what you carry? He looks at you, still impossibly calm. No, he says, but I know it matters, and that is enough for now. Later that day, you return to your chambers and do something that startles even the servants. You laugh. A real one. It spills out like spring water through a cracked stone wall. You sit on your bedrobe, wrinkled hair undone, and you laugh until tears streak your cheeks. Not with rage, not with irony, but with release. For the first time in eons, the palace feels less like a cage and more like a home, with odd furniture and questionable plumbing. You retrieve the remaining half of the chain, the one still curled beneath your pillow. It's cool now, almost weightless. You don't destroy it. You place it in a box of olive wood and carve one word into the lid, reminder. Not punishment, not warning, just memory. You'd set the box on a high shelf beside your rarely used diadem, and for a moment you don't feel like a queen. You feel like something freer. That night in the garden of the Hesperides, the golden apples tremble on their branches, not from wind but from change. The Hesperides do not speak, but they smile. And in the depths of the river packed, unseen and unmapped, the waters run warmer than they have in an age. You've not broken the vow, you've rewritten it together. The days that follow are strangely quiet. Not uneventful gods are never truly idle, but softer. The palace no longer echoes with thunderous debates or impromptu feasts. Instead, the silence feels deliberate, respectful.
Like Olympus itself is waiting to see what you do next. You rise early each morning, no longer out of duty, but from curiosity. And that's what surprises you most, the curiosity returning. You find yourself wandering again, not to patrol or correct, but to observe. You walk the sun-stained galleries of Apollo's wing and stop to examine murals you've ignored for centuries. You run your hand along the banister carved by Prometheus before his punishment. You pause in the atrium where Artemis once declared she'd never wed, her voice shaking even as her eyes held steady. You even find yourself beside the peacocks, not the symbols of your power, but the actual birds. They watch you without expectation. They blink, slow and deliberate. Their feathers catch the morning light like shattered gems stitched back together. It's here that Iris finds you again. He's asking for you, she says. You don't have to ask who.
The child waits in the amphitheatre of clouds, same as before. Only now he's surrounded by scrolls, dozens, stacked like miniature towers around him. A single quill floats mid-air, writing without ink. He looks up and grins. I'm writing down the rules, he says proudly. Rules you echo, he nods, not for gods, for vows, so no one forgets what they mean. You arch an eyebrow. Ambitious, I'm only writing what I remember. You sit beside him, but you weren't there for most of it. He shrugs. Sometimes memory skips. You nod slowly, letting his words settle. Then he asks something unexpected. Do you want to add one? You blink, a rule. He nods solemnly. You pause. Then yes, he hands you the quill. It's warm in your fingers, alive in a way that mortal ink never is. You write a vow must be a choice, not a cage. The moment the words leave the quill, the scroll glows, folds itself neatly, floats into the center of the pile. You should write more, he says. You're good at it. You smile, a real one. I used to be. He looks at you. You still are. Historians, of course, say nothing about this part, not because they forgot, but because they never knew. Divine children born of dreams and reconciliation rarely leave monuments behind, but perhaps that's the point. Not every legacy is marble. Some are paper and ink and rules whispered into eternity by a child sitting beside a queen who finally put down her scepter. Later in the garden of the Hesperides, you find something curious, a new tree, not planted by you, not golden. Its leaves are silver, its fruit still small, still green, glows faintly when touched. The Hesperides say nothing, but one of them, Erythea, offers you a knowing glance. It sprouted the day he arrived, she says. You nod. You don't need to pick its fruit to know what it holds. Possibility. The kind you used to fear, the kind you now welcome.
You begin to write again. Not decrees, not punishments, stories. You write about goddesses who break their own rules to keep a promise, about children who remind the sky it once had a mother, about vows that bend without breaking, and rivers that carry regrets without drowning them. And always, always you end with the same phrase, and she chose again. Because that's what the vow has become, not a single choice sealed forever in blood and stone, but the right to choose again and again who you are, what you protect, and who you forgive. You sit beneath the silver-leafed tree more often now. It's become a place of quiet reflection, and the Hesperides no longer hover nearby with nervous eyes. They seem to understand you're not here to command anymore. You're here to listen. One morning, as the wind gently bends the branches, a shadow appears at the garden's edge. Not threatening, familiar. Aphrodite.
Barefoot as always, her golden hair pinned lazily, robes whispering across the grass like gossip. She walks like someone who's never tripped on a lie, and yet you know better. I heard she says plucking a fruit from the nearest tree without asking. About the vow, of course she did. Love always hears first, and you ask, not quite rising. She bites into the fruit, chews, about time. You glance up, she shrugs. It's not weakness to change, it's vanity to think you never should. You smirk. Careful, Olympus might revoke your poetic license. Aphrodite grins. Let them. They're too busy pretending control is the same as power. She sits beside you without invitation, goddess of love and disruption, casually magnificent. After a while, she speaks again. Quieter this time. I gave you the girdle, one she says, to help you remind Zeus why he chose you. You remember. How could you forget Aphrodite's girdle, a divine sash laced with charm, desire, and all the subtle manipulations that turn hearts soft or bitter? You'd borrowed it not for seduction, but for influence, for strategy, to steer a tempest disguised as a husband. You knew it wouldn't last, you say. She nods. But it gave you time. You could have told me. She shrugs. You needed to feel it. Historians still debate whether the gods borrowed each other's artifacts. The girdle, the helm of Hades, the thunderbolts of Zeus, were they symbols or shared weapons? But with Aphrodite, the answer was always the same. Emotion was the weapon. Everything else was window dressing. I never thanked you, you murmur. Good, she says with a grin. Would have ruined it. You both laugh, soft and human, a sound Olympus rarely allows. Then her tone changes. You know what's coming, don't you? You nod, because you do. You felt it in the rivers, in the chain, in the way the vow tugged just before it unspooled. A new balance approaches, not of war, but of reckoning. Some of the gods, they don't want it to change, Aphrodite says, tossing the apple core into the grass. They've wrapped themselves in permanence. You glance at her. And you, she stands brushing off her robe. I believe love isn't supposed to stand still. It should ruin your plans, not preserve them. She winks. You'll need help. You smile. I know. As she vanishes into sunlight, you feel it again, that low hum beneath Olympus. But this time it's not just rivers whispering, it's voices, old ones, quiet ones, the fates. That evening you descend the mountain, not as queen, but as a woman with unfinished business. The wind doesn't resist your passage, and the stars seem brighter. They always do when you're nearing something inevitable. The cave of the Moirai lies beneath a cypress grove, hidden behind a waterfall that sings in three-part harmony. No guards, no fanfare. You enter alone. They're waiting. Clotho lachesis atropos. Spinners, measurers, cutters. They do not speak. They don't need to. You kneel not out of reverence but ritual. I come not to ask you begin, but to understand. Clotho steps forward, cradling a spool of glowing thread. You wish to see your own. You nod. She holds it out. And for the first time, you see it. Not gold, not silver. A thread of braided color shifting with each breath. It flickers like candlelight sometimes, smooth, sometimes frayed, never still. You reach out, touch it, and your mind floods with visions. A girl swearing an oath alone on a mountain. A queen watching her child fall through clouds. A wife biting back wrath for the sake of something larger. A woman breaking a vow not in rage, but in mercy. The thread pulses. And then another flash. Your thread splits and begins weaving into another, the child's. A new pattern forms, unexpected, wild, but balanced. When you pull your hand back, the fates nod in unison. You have not broken your path, Atropos says. You've braided it. You exhale, then rise and leave. The fates never lie, but they also never offer comfort. So when they give you this, it means something has truly changed. When you return to Olympus, the wind feels warmer. Not a change in weather. Gods rarely notice such mortal things, but a change in tone. As if the sky, once ruled by thunder and stubbornness, is beginning to hum a different song. You step into the Hall of the Seasons, where the floor tiles represent the turning of time. Winter shivers in onyx, spring blossoms in emerald, summer blazes in ruby, and autumn rustles in amber. In the center, always unmoving, a white disk, the now. But today, the now is flickering. You kneel and place your palm on it. For the first time in millennia, you are the one out of sync. And that's when Persephone enters. She doesn't knock, doesn't announce herself. Queens don't need doors when they already rule half the year. She's cloaked in twilight eyes like frostbitten violets. But there's a softness to her today, a gentleness that smells faintly of crushed petals and ashes. You felt it too, she says. You nod. The weave is changing. She joins you on the now tile, the hem of her dress brushing yours. When I was a girl, she murmurs, I thought eternity meant sameness, that everything would stay as it was if I just held on tight enough. You glance at her, and now she smiles faintly. Now I know eternity is made of choices, not permanence. You exhale through your nose. Funny how the ones who rule get taught by the ones who wander. Persephone's smile widens. You taught me to endure, but you're teaching me something new now, which is how to release. Historians rarely give Persephone her due. Always the abducted maiden, never the quiet strategist. But you've always known better. She wasn't stolen, she chose to stay. And that's a different kind of power. You reach into your robe and remove a small pouch. Inside a single pomegranate seed, dried, preserved. A relic of one of the first vows Olympus ever allowed to fray. You hand it to her. She doesn't ask why, she just closes her fingers around it. I won't plant it, she says. I know, but I'll carry it, you nod, and the now tile stops flickering. Because the present has accepted the change. Later, as the sun sets, you find yourself called to the Amphore archive, a vaulted chamber rarely visited by anyone under 6,000 years old. It's where old vows go to sleep, not broken, not enforced, just shelved. Each amphora here is labeled with a god's name and a promise they once made. You've avoided this place for eons, but now you walk straight in. You run your fingers across old clay jars. Ares, I will never retreat. Demeter, I will always find her. Poseidon, the sea shall never forgive. Hermes, I will never tell. You find your own row. Your name appears more than once, but one jar sits slightly off kilter, dustless, still warm. You lift it. Etched into the side, I will not let betrayal make me cruel. You stare at it. Feel the weight. Then slowly, you lift the lid. Inside is a single white ribbon tied in a knot. You pull the knot loose, and the ribbon dissolves. No flames, no music, just absence.
Like breath released after a long-held silence. Behind you, a voice speaks. Did it hurt? You don't turn around? No, it healed. Hermes steps into view, tilting his head like a curious bird. I wondered when you'd come here. You knew he shrugs. I know everything. I just pretend I don't. He walks beside you, his winged sandals making no sound. He studies the shelf. You broke it. I rewrote it. He nods. About time. Then, without asking, he adds a new jar to the shelf. Blank. Untitled. Room for a new one, he says. You smile, not mine. He smiles back. That child's maybe. Or maybe it's for all of you. As you leave the archive, you don't feel lighter. You feel aligned. The gods will resist the shift. Some always do, but now your strength doesn't come from standing still. It comes from moving forward on purpose. And the vow, it hasn't vanished. It's evolved. Because some promises aren't meant to last forever. Only long enough to remind you who you are when no one else remembers. Word spreads through Olympus like wildfire through dry laurels, except this time no one gets burned. Not yet. They say the queen has changed. They whisper it in ambrosia halls, murmur it between harp strings, pass it through the wind like secrets carved on feathers. Some say you've gone soft. Others claim it's a trick, a new layer of strategy. But the most dangerous truth, that you've changed not to win, but because you finally stopped playing the game. And that terrifies them. You find yourself the center of attention at a gathering you never called.
Gods arrive in 3s and 5s, pretending to pass through, pretending not to glance your way. Apollo leans against a column as if the sun needs propping up. Athena watches you with her owl perched and unusually quiet. Even Ares, whose default mood is sword, sits without drawing one. They're waiting. So you speak. I know what you think you say, voice calm as still water. That I've broken something sacred. That I've loosened the foundation of Olympus. No one interrupts. I haven't, you continue. I've made room on it. That's all. Demeter shifts slightly. Room for what? For grace, you reply. A moment of silence. Then Athena, cool and careful. Grace has a price. So does rigidity, you reply. We've paid it. Mortals have paid it more. Ares huffs. Mortals are always paying something. You glance at him. And who do you think collects the bill that silences even him? Historians still argue whether the gods held a formal council to discuss the shift. There are no surviving inscriptions, no scrolls, no poetic record. But the change in how Olympus ruled thereafter, the fewer punishments, the rise of the oracle cults, the quiet retirements of once prominent deities, all hint that something was said, something true. You end the gathering with no decree, no thunderclap, only a question. What do you want to become when no one's worshipping you anymore? You leave them to chew on it like olives left too long in brine. In the days that follow, you take long walks through the mortal world, not disguised, not interfering, just observing. You watch a widow plant herbs beside her cottage, whispering to the wind. You see a merchant give a coin to a child missing a sandal. You see a young girl kneel at a shrine, not to pray, but to rest. She doesn't know it's your shrine. She simply feels safe there. You sit beside her, invisible. Why here, you whisper. She shrugs, feels like someone listens. You smile. Perhaps that's all worship ever was, not adoration, but the hope that someone was paying attention. You return to Olympus with something mortal in your pocket, a wildflower wilted at the edges but fragrant. You press it between the pages of an old decree scroll, one you never enforced. A law that once demanded nymphs ask permission to sing in sacred places. You cross out the law with ink made from crushed lavender. No one objects, not even the scroll.
Later in your chamber, the child visits again. He doesn't knock. He simply appears as if summoned by the shifting gravity of your will. He climbs onto your lap without asking. "What are you thinking about?" he asks. You smile. "What happens to queens who no longer need to rule?" he thinks. Then carefully, "They become mothers." The word settles into your bones like warm water. Not mother in the literal sense, not just of Hephaestus or Ares or Hebe, but mother of balance, of restraint, of second chances. You stroke the child's hair. That's a good answer. I learned it from you. He falls asleep soon after, curled in your robe, fingers tangled in the edge of your sash. You stay still, letting time roll around you like gentle tide. Outside, the sky doesn't roar, it hums, and somewhere in the valley, a mortal girl lights a candle, not for blessing, not for miracles, just to say thank you. You don't answer aloud, but you hear her, and that's enough.
By now, the gods know better than to ask you for permission, but that doesn't stop them from hovering. Today it's Hermes, which means something chaotic is about to knock politely, then kick the door down. Anyway, you're in the garden again, tracing the edge of the silver leaf tree, when you hear the flutter of wings behind you. I didn't say come in, you murmur. Good Hermes replies, grinning as he appears from nowhere, because I didn't. He stands on a branch, upside down sandals, dangling his voice thick with curiosity. Word is you've started a revolution. You sigh. It's not a revolution, it's a clarification. Same thing with better manners, he quips, flipping down. You wait. He pulls something from the folds of his robe, a scroll marked with a seal you haven't seen in an age. Your blood goes cold, the spiral flame, the river gods again. You told me they'd said their piece, you whisper. They did, Hermes says. This one isn't from them, it's from her. You take the scroll slowly, open it. Inside, one sentence burns across the parchment, curling at the edges like it's alive. I forgave you, but the earth remembers Io, but not in threat. In warning, the earth remembers. You think of Prometheus's punishment etched into stone, of mortals cursed for curiosity, chained by divine insecurity, of the countless voices lost to the silence of that's how it's always been. Hermes watches your reaction with the precision of a gambler reading a deck. You knew she'd write, you murmur. I hoped he admits. The new weave, the one you began, it's not stable yet. Threads need anchoring. And I'm the anchor. No, he says. You're the weaver. That's worse. Weavers hold responsibility. Weavers don't get to walk away. You send Hermes off with a nod and a message of thanks. No ceremony. No scroll in return. Just intention wrapped in thought. The kind the gods used before language, when meaning was shaped in silence. Later you stand at the edge of the mortal world again, but this time you don't just observe, you speak. To a priestess lighting a lantern before a nameless shrine, to an old man planting vines that won't bear fruit until he's long gone, to a boy teaching his sister how to swim. You don't use thunder or visions or celestial signs. You simply nudge. A warm breeze, a clear thought, a whisper of calm when their grief peaks. You're not worshipped, but you're noticed. And you begin to understand what legacy might look like when it isn't carved into stone or hymns, when it's lived. Back on Olympus, you return to your garden. The silver tree has blossomed 5 buds at once. The Hesperides are stunned. Hasn't done that since. Ever Eagle whispers. You touch one blossom. It glows pale blue. You do not ask what it means. You accept it. That night, the child returns to you again. This time he's holding a scroll of his own, unmarked. Blank. "I want to make a new vow," he says. "You blink." Already he nods, not to bind myself, just to remember. "You pause, may I?" he asks. You hand him the quill. He writes carefully, awkwardly, like a mortal child, still learning script. "I will ask before I become." You feel the tears before you register them, because it's everything your vow wasn't. Not an oath to prevent harm, but a promise to pause, to listen. You kiss the top of his head. That's a vow worth keeping. He smiles, curls up beside you under the starlit ivy, and whispers, "I think I got it from you." And you believe him. The next morning, before even the stars have fully faded from the velvet of the sky, you awaken with a strange certainty in your chest. Today something ends, not in grief, not in flame, but in closure. You dress simply again, soft violet linen the color of dusk rather than royalty. No diadem, no brooches forged from meteor iron, only a silver pin in the shape of an open hand. A gift you recall from a mortal queen who once begged for rain in the wrong season and got it anyway. At the far edge of Olympus stands a door most have forgotten. The door without a name. Not locked, not sealed, just avoided. It leads not to Hades or the sea, but to memory. To those quiet places between time and myth where forgotten promises sleep like buried seeds. You walk toward it, sandals whispering against moss-slick stone, and you bring the child with you. He holds your hand, not because he needs guidance, but because he knows you do. You push open the door, and immediately the scent of rain and parchment fills your lungs. The air here smells of every vow ever spoken, some fulfilled, some withered, some never dared aloud. Inside the walls are made of light. Not illumination, but actual stories. Threads of vow light stretch from floor to ceiling, pulsing gently. He steps forward wide-eyed. It's alive. Yes, you whisper. So are promises, until we forget them. You walk the corridor together, and for each glowing thread a voice hums softly, snippets of oaths made in desperation, in joy, in ignorance. Each one like a heartbeat that never fully stopped. You pause before one that flickers differently, your own, the first one. "I will not let betrayal make me cruel." The words hang in the air, aching. "I remember this," the child says. You nod. "It was never meant for you to carry, but I can." He reaches out so gently, and the thread splits softly, like silk under moonlight. It doesn't break. It becomes two. One remains tethered to the past, the other flows forward, toward him. Now it says, "I will respond to pain without turning it into punishment." The child breathes deeply. "That sounds better," it is you say, not because it's softer, but because it's wiser. Historians never knew this place existed. They wrote poems about river oaths and sky-born decrees, but none of them found the door without a name. Perhaps because it never opens to those who seek it, only to those who are ready. You and the child linger. He touches another thread, one from a mortal girl who promised never to speak unkindly again, and failed and tried again. She tried 3 times, he says, but she meant it every time. You smile. That's what makes it holy. When you leave, you don't close the door behind you. You leave it ajar, because someone else will need it someday, and they deserve to find it open. Back in Olympus, something feels different, not around you, but in you. The vow that once held you like glass now flows like water, still shaping you, still directing you, but not caging you. You eat dinner with Hebe and her husband Heracles, who hasn't broken anything in hours, a new personal record. You listen to Apollo complain about artistic theft among mortal bards, and you laugh harder than you meant to. You offer Athena advice she didn't ask for, and she actually considers it. And when Zeus passes you in the corridor and nods quietly without thunder or tension, you nod back. Not in surrender, in understanding. That night in your garden, beneath the silver tree, the Hesperides light 3 floating lanterns and send them into the sky. One for the vow, one for the change, and one for what comes next. The child sits beside you watching them rise. Will they remember, he asks. Some you reply, but most will forget. He nods. Then we'll remind them, not with punishment, with stories. You begin the reminders, not with proclamations or divine shows, but with small acts, a returned letter, an unspoken apology, a gaze held just 1 second longer than necessary. It starts when you visit Hephaestus, no messenger, no announcement, just you standing in the doorway of his forge, the scent of molten bronze curling in your nostrils like the memory of something half burned. He doesn't look up at first, just keeps working, hammering out some intricate little mechanism too complex for the casual eye to follow. But he knows you're there. I suppose you're here to tell me the earth forgives you, he says flatly. No, you answer. I'm here because you don't have to. The hammer stills. Slowly he turns. His eyes are not cruel, not sharp, just tired. I rebuilt Olympus, he says, literally. Piece by piece after you all knocked it down. I know, I made weapons for gods who forgot my name. I crafted thrones I would never sit on.
You nod, and I sent you falling through the sky. He squints. Don't say it unless you mean it. I mean it, you reply. I was angry and proud, and I thought punishing what I didn't understand would make me feel safe. He snorts. Did it? You shake your head. I don't expect forgiveness, you say, but I would like to start remembering together, so we don't forget again. He studies you a long time, then walks across the forge, rummages through a pile of half-forgotten projects, and returns with a small object, a golden gear etched with olive branches. What is it, you ask? He hands it to you, a reminder that broken things can still move forward. Historians still argue whether Hephaestus ever reconciled with Hera. Some say he did only because it was strategic. Others claim their bond was reforged in silence. But here in this moment, no strategy, no silence, just acceptance. And maybe that's enough.
You spend the next moon cycle in the mortal world, not as a goddess, as a guest. You visit temples and find them empty, not abandoned, just open, used for more than prayer. A place for grieving mothers to rest, a safe space for wandering poets to sleep. One shrine even houses a bee colony in its ceiling. You do not ask them to honor you, you watch. And something odd begins to bloom in your chest, pride, not for being worshipped, for being remembered not as a flawless queen, but as a complicated one. You hear a story told by a young girl at a village fire. Hera once turned a vow into a doorway. Not everyone walked through, but those who did never left the same. The details are off. The river is a mountain, the child is a deer, but the heart is right. You smile. Stories travel differently than facts. They're warmer, stickier. They carry feeling. And feelings last longer than marble. When you return to Olympus, the council hall has changed. Zeus sits not above, but beside others now. Athena has opened her archives to mortal scholars. Demeter has allowed the fields to lie fallow by choice, not grief. Even Ares has taken up gardening. He's bad at it, but he's trying. You take your seat not at the center, but off to the side. And when a new matter arises, a dispute over mortal dreams overlapping with divine territory. They look to you, not for command, but for wisdom. You speak. They listen, not because you're queen, but because you've earned it. That night in your chamber, you open a new scroll. Blank. You dip your pen in ink pressed from violet petals, and you begin a vow when lived well becomes a path, not a prison. You smile and keep writing because the world is still unraveling, but so are you. And now finally that's not a tragedy, it's a choice. Spring unfurls itself across Olympus, not with trumpets, but with the quiet persistence of newness. Green shoots nudging through marble cracks, birds building nests in the curls of ancient statues, even the muses humming softer, less rehearsed melodies. You rise before the sun, not because you must, but because you want to witness what grows without your control. There's a strange comfort in it. You sit beside the silver leaf tree, now lush with soft fruit and iridescent blossoms. The Hesperides no longer guard it. They tend to it now, gently, like something sacred that doesn't need protection, just care. The child appears beside you, barefoot as always.
I had a dream, he says without greeting. You raise an eyebrow. Were you riding a dolphin again? He grins. No, I was a river. Oh, and I didn't stop when I hit the mountain. I went through it. You smile. Did it hurt a little, he admits. But I liked what was on the other side. You tousle his hair. Sometimes that's what vows feel like. He nods as if he's known this forever. Then his face grows more serious. They want you to speak. Who the mortals, the ones in Delphi, they're waiting for something new. You blink. Delphi, the oracle's seat, Apollo's shrine. A place where past and future braid together in visions half heard through smoke and breath. You haven't spoken there in centuries. Why now? He shrugs. Maybe they need to see what it looks like when a god changes their mind. The words land like soft thunder.
You arrive in Delphi unannounced. No celestial procession, no winged lions or horned serpents. Just you, a plain tunic, and your voice. The priests tremble. You assure them gently, I'm not here to reclaim, only to witness. They lead you to the inner sanctum where the Pythia waits, young calm, draped in pale linen, her fingers stained with laurel sap. She opens her eyes and does not scream. Instead, she bows, deep and without fear. I dreamed you'd come, she says, but not with judgment. No, you reply, with memory. You step forward and touch the omphalos, the navel of the world. Cold stone meets warm skin. And suddenly everything opens, not a prophecy, a reminder of your first vow, of the day you rewrote it, of the chain now melted, of the child's scroll, of the gods who shifted one breath at a time. The temple pulses with a story not in images but emotion. Everyone within its walls feels it. The priest who once doubted the gods cries without knowing why. A traveller on the road outside pauses, hand to heart. A young woman lighting a candle at a roadside shrine finds herself whispering, "Let me become without fear." Historians later describe it as a warm tremor in the earth, a moment of equilibrium. They say the oracle wept, then laughed, then simply said, "She chose again." You leave Delphi as quietly as you came, but your story does not. It travels faster than Hermes, quieter than Hades, farther than Poseidon's tides. Mortals begin to craft new oaths, not to control one another, but to understand themselves. I vow to listen before I decide. I promise not to use silence as punishment. I will leave room for someone to change. They write them in dust and blood and chalk. They fail often, but they try again. Because now Failure isn't banishment. It's part of becoming.
Back in Olympus, the stars seem a little lower. Not falling, just watching more closely. You sit by the child once more. He leans against you and says, "You're different now, so are you?" You reply, "Do you miss the old vow?" You pause. "No, I miss who I hoped I'd be when I made it." He considers this, and then you're better than she was. You don't answer, but your hand tightens gently around his, because he's right. And tomorrow, you'll choose again. The temple bells echo across Olympus. At sunset 5 resonant chimes that signal a gathering not of war, but of decision. It's been centuries since they've rung for that reason. Most gods don't remember what the 5th bell means, but you do. It means the matter concerns us all. You arrive at the circle of accord dressed in silence. The amphitheatre carved into cloudstone gleams faintly under the fading light. One by one, the others appear, some slowly, some reluctantly, some already muttering. Zeus arrives last.
For once, he doesn't summon lightning to frame his entrance, just walks in, sits, and folds his arms like an old general, hoping to avoid the battle entirely. "You stand! Thank you for coming!" Ares scoffs. "You summoned us, you smile. And yet you came." He rolls his eyes, but says nothing else. You glance around. Apollo twirls a laurel twig. Athena polishes a coin. Hestia, rare and radiant, knits quietly beside Demeter. Hermes sits backwards in his chair. Dionysus is sipping something suspiciously glowing. All eyes turn to you. You hold up your hand, and in your palm appears the final piece of the vow, the original knot, small, pale, and now loose. This was the first promise I made you say, before thrones, before titles, before Olympus was anything more than ambition and carved clouds. You let it hang in the air a moment, and for once no one interrupts. I broke it, you continue, not with wrath, not with pride, but because keeping it had begun to damage more than it protected. The amphitheatre remains still. I was afraid that changing it meant losing myself. You glance down at the child now seated beside the scrolls he's been writing, like it's a game of divine hopscotch. But it gave me back something I didn't know I'd lost. You point to him, a future I hadn't imagined. Athena leans forward. "What are you proposing?" "Nothing." Eyebrows raise. "I'm not here to propose law," you explain. "Not today. I'm asking for recognition, that vows must evolve as we do, that divinity does not mean immovability, and that mercy can be taught." Apollo frowns. "You want to set a precedent." "No," you reply. "I want to end one." Silence again. Then Hestia, steady as firelight, she's right. Demeter nods. The old vows were written in fear. Fear of loss, fear of power unchecked. Ares mutters, "Fear of boredom." You chuckle, "Even that." Athena rises. "So what do we call this?" You turn to her. "A new standard." One that doesn't punish for change, but prepares for it. She pauses, then nods. Zeus finally speaks. "If we do this, we admit fault." You meet his gaze evenly. "If we don't, we repeat it." Historians have long speculated about the great accord of renewal, a mysterious event after which temple doctrine subtly shifted and fewer mortals were punished for divine disrespect. Some say it was the birth of forgiveness among gods. Others claim it was merely political maneuvering. But you know the truth. It was the day the gods admitted they could be better, not just stronger, better. After the circle disperses, you remain behind. The amphitheatre slowly empties until it's just you and the boy. He looks up. Did they agree? Not out loud, you say, but their silence said yes. He grins. That counts. Then he unrolls a scroll and hands it to you. You expect another vow, but it's a story. The title, The Queen Who Chose Twice. You read the first line. There once was a queen who held still for so long she forgot she could move. But one day she did, and the mountain did not fall. It shifted just enough for others to climb it too. You close the scroll, blinking. You wrote this. He shrugs. You lived it. Then sleepily. And I remembered. You tuck the scroll under your arm, stand and look at the sky. The stars tonight shimmer closer, not brighter. As if leaning in to listen. You speak one word aloud. Begin. And from that moment on, the myths start changing. The myths change slowly at first, not rewritten by force, but retold by those who lived under their weight. Mortals whisper new endings to old tales, rethreading them around kitchen fires and temple steps. Children reenact them with mud-covered hands and broken olive branches. In one village, a little girl playing goddess declares, "I forgive you" to her friend, and the watching elders pause, unsure whether to laugh or bow. In another, a blind priest writes a hymn that ends not with a smiting, but a sigh. And deep in the shadow of a crumbling shrine once dedicated to vengeance, someone scrawls the words, "She chose again." It's spreading. Not like fire, like roots. Back on Olympus you walk without guards, without agenda. The court adjusts slowly, old routines twitch and grumble like rusted gears exposed to sunlight. But they do adjust. Apollo no longer insists on winning every debate, just every other one. Athena consults with mortal philosophers and doesn't correct their conclusions. Even Hera's peacocks have stopped announcing her arrival with screeches. You sit often beneath the silver-leafed tree now, thick with fruit birds nesting in its branches, ivy lacing gently through the roots. A tree born of change, not chaos. Its shadow offers quiet instead of awe. One afternoon the child arrives carrying a basket full of scrolls. All done, he announces. You raise an eyebrow. With what my stories, he says, proudly dropping them at your feet. About you, about us, about all the gods, but less dramatic. You laugh. Good luck with that. He opens one scroll at random and begins reading. Ares tried to grow olives. He failed, but he kept watering the same spot, and one day something that wasn't war grew anyway. You cover your mouth to muffle your chuckle. He opens another Poseidon got tired of crashing waves, so he taught a fisherman how to listen to the tide instead of fear it. And another Hera did not stop being powerful. She just stopped pretending that power had to mean pain. That one stops you. You reach for the scroll, reread the line, then read it again, softer. Do you think they'll believe these, you ask? The child shrugs. Some will, and the others. They'll need time. You nod. Time. Time, once your enemy, has now become your quietest ally. That evening you visit the Temple of Winds, one of Olympus's oldest halls. It's been empty for 1,000 years, abandoned after the gods grew tired of mortal winds arguing back. But you open it anyway. Not to pray, to write. You bring one of the child's scrolls and a blank one of your own. At the center of the temple lies an altar, long unused, its stone smooth as sleep. You place your scroll there, whisper a single phrase. This is not an ending. The altar glows faintly, not in fire, but in permission. And then, for the first time in eons, the winds stir. North, south, east, west. Not all at once. One at a time. Acknowledging the shift. Not demanding, accepting. Back in your garden, the stars shimmer. The child leans on your shoulder. "I think they'll keep telling your story," he says. You smile. "It's not mine anymore. You'll still be in it, though." Maybe you murmur, as the one who let go, "He's quiet for a long time." Then softly, "That's the best part." You rest your head against his. And for the first time since the vow was made and remade and released, you rest without waiting for it to snap back. Because it won't. Because you won't. Because choosing again doesn't mean failing before, it means becoming after. The dreams return, but they're different now. No longer warnings wrapped in thunder or punishments carved in cloudstone. These dreams arrive softly, as if walking barefoot across your sleep. And always they carry echoes not of who you were, but of who you might yet be. Tonight you dream of a feast. Not one of Olympian excess, no flaming boars or singing goblets, but a quiet table beneath an olive tree, a simple meal, bread still warm, honey that smells of wild thyme, grapes, figs, and space enough for everyone. Io is there, so is Hephaestus. Even Ares impossibly holds a flower in his calloused hand, and the child sits at the head not because he demanded it, but because no one could imagine him anywhere else. You sit not in the place of honor, but beside an empty chair, waiting for someone not yet ready, because you understand now not all forgiveness arrives on schedule. Some travel by foot, through stories over generations. And that chair, it will be filled. One day. You wake before dawn and dress without ceremony. Today you return to Mount Thornax. It's been lifetimes since you climbed its weather-twisted slopes. Even gods feel the weight of old altars. You go alone. No birds follow. No epics are composed. Just you, one foot in front of the other, and the wind remembering who you were. The summit is just as you left it, a crooked cedar, a flat stone worn smooth by vows and weather, and silence thick enough to braid. You kneel. The last time you did this, your voice shook with youth and defiance. Now it's steady, not because you know everything, but because you've lived through not knowing. You place your hand on the altar and speak. I release the vow that made me strong through stillness. A breeze stirs. I keep the wisdom it gave me. The wind nods. I promise nothing eternal, only intentions shaped anew with each choice. The mountain does not crack. It sighs.
And something within the stone, a trace of your first oath, loosens. Not erased, not undone, just offered back to you. You pick up a pebble from the altar and tuck it into your robe pocket. A new beginning needs a reminder, but not an anchor.
On your descent you see something that makes you stop. A mortal girl, alone, climbing slowly with effort and grit and skinned knees. She does not see you. Gods don't often appear to those still fighting gravity. You step aside and let her pass. At the summit, she'll find no miracles, but she will find quiet. And that may be enough. Historians never record this visit. No one sings songs of Hera returning to her vow's birthplace. But maybe that's how it should be. Not all sacred moments need witnesses. Some need only wind. Back on Olympus, you find the child in the silver leaf garden scribbling a new tale. Did you go far? He asks without looking up. Far enough, you say. He grins. Bring me anything. You drop the pebble into his palm. He studies it like a philosopher, then whispers, "This feels like the middle of a story." You nod, it is, and that night, when the stars breathe low, and the gods sleep in rare peace, a single sentence drifts across the sky, unwritten, unclaimed, true. She chose again, and again, and again, because that's what queens do when the world gives them no script. They write a new one. Olympus changes in slow, creaking gestures like a house too old to renovate, but too sacred to abandon. There's no announcement, no official decree, but slowly the palace begins to breathe differently. You start noticing it in the way gods walk, less stomping, more stepping. Even Dionysus, who once crashed through corridors like a walking carnival, now pauses to listen to mortals sing in the fields below before spilling his wine across the clouds. You hear new laughter, gentler, less aimed, like a weapon. And you see fewer punishments written in marble and more apologies whispered through smoke. You never asked for credit, but they offer it anyway. Athena begins referring to the revised vow in council meetings, emphasis on revised. Apollo composes a new hymn titled When the Gods Remember Grace. A little long, too many liars, but the heart is in the right place. Even Zeus, reluctant as ever, begins phrasing his thunder like questions instead of verdicts. It's not perfect, but neither are you, and now finally that feels like freedom. One morning, you wake to find the silver-leafed tree has split. Not broken, not withered, just divided at its base, growing in two directions now. One branch reaches toward the stars, bold blooming, chasing the light with wild abandon. The other bends gently downward toward the earth, its blossoms paler, its fruits smaller but richer in scent. Balance, above and below. You sit beneath it, watching bees lazily trace the air between its twin canopies, and for a long time you don't speak. Then the child joins you. He looks up at the twin branches, then down at the roots. Which one's the vow, he asks. You smile. Neither. They're what happened after. He considers this, then nods. You're not going to make another vow, are you? You shake your head. Not today. He sighs in relief and lays down head in your lap. I like it better when you just choose. You stroke his hair. I do too.
Later you're visited by the river gods. Not in storm or judgment this time. They arrive as mist, drifting into your garden, coiling like serpents through the roots of your tree. They do not speak with mouths, they remember in your direction. And you understand they've accepted it. The vow didn't break the world, it unfroze it. You bow your head, not out of duty, but out of recognition. And the mist dissolves with a sound like pages turning.
You begin writing again. A new scroll, no title, just entries. Each one starts the same. Today I chose to wait before speaking, to listen when my instinct was to correct, to tell someone they had not failed even when they thought they had. The scroll fills slowly, but it fills. You keep it in your personal archive behind a curtain of woven starlight, not hidden, just private, sacred. A reminder that choosing well doesn't need to be dramatic. It just needs to be done. One evening, as the horizon spills fire across the sky, the child comes to you holding a single apple from the twin tree. He holds it out. You raise an eyebrow. I didn't pluck it, he says. It fell. You take it, bite. It's sweeter than you imagined. And inside it a single seed. He watches you. What'll you do with it? You close your hand around it and whisper, choose again. You plant the seed the next morning, not in Olympus, not in your garden. You descend into the mortal world, barefoot robes tuck the child skipping beside you as birds scatter overhead, and the dawn smells like wet stone and time. You wander until you find a hill, not yet named, tucked between a sleepy grove. and a stream that hums like a lullaby. No temples stand here, no altars, no statues, just earth, soft and willing. This place, you say. The child kneels, first digging with his hands. You kneel beside him.
Together you press the seed into the soil, no divine words, no magic incantation, just presence. You cover it gently, pat it down and sit in silence. After a while he speaks. What do you think it'll grow into? You smile, something no one can control. He grins. Perfect.
Back in Olympus, your absence sparks less concern and more curiosity. The gods don't panic when you disappear now. They assume you're somewhere choosing something. And they're right. You return just before twilight hands dusted with mortal soil. You don't bother washing it off. Let it stay beneath your nails, a reminder that even gods can root things in earth. You pass through the hall of echoes and catch a whisper you don't recognize. She's the queen who softened the marble. You pause. It's meant to be insulting. You take it as a compliment. Later that evening, Hermes visits again. He enters with his usual casual chaos, a half-peeled orange in one hand, a scroll tucked under his arm, sandals squeaking like rain on tile. "You been busy?" he says. "So have you," you reply, nodding at the scroll. He shrugs. Mortals are asking new questions. Oh, like what happens if we stop demanding perfection and start practicing grace? You raise an eyebrow. That's dangerous. He grins, delightfully. Then more serious. Some of the others want to visit the seed. Let them, you say. It doesn't belong to me. Still, he adds, tossing you a folded note. They'd like you there when it sprouts. You open the note. It's not words. It's a time, a moment that hasn't happened yet. You nod. I'll be there. Hermes watches you, something unreadable in his eyes. You changed the current, he says, and didn't drown. You meet his gaze. Maybe the tide needed changing. He nods.
And maybe queens who let go become rivers. Then he vanishes in the blink of a feather.
That night, you return to your private scroll. Today's entry. Today I chose to plant something I will never see bloom, and trust that someone else will water it. You pause, then add, that is enough. You roll the scroll, place it gently beside the pebble from Mount Thornax, and let the candle burn a little longer than usual. The child sleeps curled at the foot of your bed, one hand open as if still offering you that first apple. You exhale, and for the first time since the vow was made, you feel not bound by it, but held. A full season passes. The gods mark time differently from mortals, but even Olympus cannot ignore the change in rhythm. Days stretch a little longer. Conversations carry a little more weight, and silence once avoided is now welcomed. You spend your days walking again, not through courts or along judgment halls, but across the quieter edges of divine space, the dew-drenched paths beside Artemis's hunting fields, the humid air around Demeter's newly relaxed granaries, even the winding ridges of the underworld's upper vale where Hades now plants poppies for no reason other than that they make Persephone smile. No lightning strikes where it shouldn't, no curses spill from your lips. You are not waiting for the next disruption, you are nourishing what you've begun. Then one day, the wind changes. Not a gale, a tug. The kind you only feel when something you've planted starts whispering from below the earth. You rise before sunrise and walk alone to that nameless hill halfway between forest and stream. It greets you before you crest the top. The tree, the one from the seed, small still but unmistakable. Its leaves shimmer silver at the tips and gold at their roots, as if unsure which they want to be. It does not match anything that grows in Olympus or in the mortal world, and yet it feels familiar. The child is already there, crouched beside it. He doesn't speak, he just touches the bark with reverence like he's tracing a future. You kneel beside him. Together you listen, not for sound but for feeling, and it comes softly, like breath on your neck. A single thought spoken not in words but in trust. Keep choosing. You exhale heart tight in the best way. This wasn't just your story anymore. It had become part of the land, the myth, the next breath. You touch the trunk. It's not mine, you murmur. It's ours, the child says. You nod. And then so gently it almost doesn't register, one of the tree's leaves falls into your palm. It shivers, then dissolves, not into ash, into ink. The child grins. You know what that means. You sigh. I have to write again. Back in Olympus, you unfurl a fresh scroll. This one is different. Not a daily record, not a personal vow. It's a letter to the mortals, to the ones who light candles without expecting miracles, to the children who whisper stories under their blankets, to the tired ones who fail and try again. You write. To those who have been told they must be perfect to be good, you do not. To those who hold on to promises that no longer serve the person you are, you may release them. To those who fear change means betrayal, it doesn't. It means you're awake. I know I was once afraid to move. Now I know the mountain doesn't fall when we shift. It opens. You sign it, simply, her who chose again. The scroll vanishes. You don't see where it goes, but the stars twinkle more noticeably that night. And far below in the mortal world, a shepherd girl begins to hum a song no one taught her, about a queen who planted silence and harvested peace. She sings it once, then forgets she ever knew it, but the song stays in the stones, in the sky, in the roots, because stories like vows don't need to be remembered to matter. They just need to be felt. The gods begin to change their language, not all at once and not always consciously, but gradually the vocabulary of Olympus softens, rounds out its corners. Words that once rang with finality, punish, forbid, smite, start to fall out of use. They're replaced by others. Wait, listen, understand, begin. In the Hall of Seasons, Demeter replaces a mosaic of scorched earth with one of loamy fields. She doesn't say why, no one asks. In the forge, Hephaestus crafts tools that mend instead of cleave. His latest invention, a golden needle that never breaks thread, no matter how tangled. Even Hades sends a raven with a curious message scratched into its feathered memory. Have you ever wondered what comes after endings? You smile when you read it. Perhaps he's finally learning to see the difference between death and pause. You spend a day alone walking the edge of the world where starlight meets soil. Few gods come here. The air is strange, not heavy, just expectant, like it's waiting for someone brave enough to ask the question it's been whispering for centuries. You sit on a boulder warmed by sun, and the child finds you there as if he were always meant to arrive. He climbs up beside you, squinting at the horizon. Do you ever think about the end? You raise an eyebrow. Of what he shrugs, everything. You consider, I used to say, when I still thought the vow defined me, and now you gaze out over the edge where constellations blur into dawn. Now I think about beginnings, constant, inconvenient, beautiful beginnings. He's quiet a moment. Then do you think mortals know we're still learning? You laugh. I hope not, we'd lose all our mystique. He giggles, kicking his heels against the stone. Then softly, do you ever miss who you were? You pause, sometimes you admit. But mostly I'm grateful I'm not still her. Because she was cruel, no, you say. Because she was stuck. The child nods. I'll probably get stuck too one day. You will, you say, brushing his hair back. And then you'll choose again. Later that evening you call a gathering. Not of gods, of storytellers, poets, scribes, dreamers, divine and mortal alike. You summon them to the amphitheater of echoes, not with commands, but with invitation. They come. You stand before them without crown, without thunder, and say we've all been telling the same story for too long. The one where power means control, where vows mean rigidity, where gods cannot change and mortals must suffer for it. Murmurs ripple like wind through grass. But that's not the story anymore, you continue, and I don't want it passed on. You lift your hands, and behind you, the silver-leafed tree blooms in full view of Olympus. I want new stories, you say, ones that end not in conquest but care, that don't ask who wins but what we've learned. The muses nod first. Then Orpheus from the shadows begins to strum. A low, hopeful chord. And you know they'll carry this forward, not with temples, but with truth. That night before sleep, you write one final line in your scroll. Today I chose not to be the last word. You blow out the candle. The flame dies with a sigh, and outside your window, stars keep falling. Not in destruction, in invitation, because endings, it turns out, aren't endings at all, just another chance to choose again. The silver leaf tree bears fruit, not one or two, but a full canopy's worth each orb, pale and luminescent, glowing faintly with something that feels older than Olympus itself. It doesn't make a sound when the first apple falls, it simply lands and rolls to the foot of the child, who looks down at it as if the tree had whispered his name. You're nearby, weaving yet another entry into your scroll, but when he picks up the fruit and holds it out to you, you stop mid-sentence. It chose me, he says, matter of fact. No, you correct gently. You chose it. He turns it over in his small hands. What do I do with it? Whatever you're ready for, you say? He nods very seriously. Then he takes a bite. The moment is not thunderous, it's quiet. And from that quiet you feel a hum begin, not just in the garden, but across Olympus. A pulse, a rhythm, a reminder that the new weave has fully taken root. And with it comes something you never expected to feel again, relief. You've kept the world together by tightening every thread for so long, and now someone else, something else is beginning to carry that tension. With softness, not strain, you lean back, eyes drifting skyward. Will I fade now, you ask aloud, not to anyone in particular? The wind answers first, no, then the child. You'll just be quieter? You smile. Good. In time, stories begin circulating of a goddess who no longer demands offerings, only reflection. Her shrines become gardens, her priests become listeners, and her legacy not written in marble, but in decisions, small ones, daily ones. I chose kindness today, someone says by a well. I waited before judging, another mutters before sleep. I forgave myself, whispers a widow, on the third day of mourning, each one a prayer, each one a page in your new myth. Historians struggle. You've become difficult to define, no longer the goddess of marriage, not solely the Queen of Olympus. The old names no longer fit. So the mortals give you a new one, Hera the Reweaver, not as a title, as a gesture. And it fits. One final evening you return to Mount Thornax. The cedar tree still stands gnarled and proud, and the altar bears no trace of the blood once pressed into its cracks. You kneel again, always kneeling here, and place your scroll at its base. The scroll of your second vow. The vow that bent, then bloomed. You whisper, "This belongs to the earth now." The wind doesn't howl, it breathes. And you rise not as a goddess who must be obeyed, but as one who can be remembered without fear. The child appears beside you, of course. He's older now somehow, wiser. He doesn't say much anymore. He doesn't need to. He takes your hand, and together you descend, not to war, not to rule, but to rest, to watch, to choose. One more time, and again, and again, and again. And now with the stars stretching thin across the sky, and your body softening into stillness, you let your breath slow. Let the sounds of Olympus fade behind the gentle hush of leaves whispering in a wind that remembers every vow, every story, every step that led you here. You feel the weight of Hera's choices, not heavy now, but folded neatly into the shape of peace. A promise remade, a crown set aside, a hand extended not in command, but in care. Let the image of her silver tree linger in your thoughts. Let its branches cradle you leaves, rustling with all the decisions not yet made, all the moments ahead that will ask, not for perfection, but for presence. You picture the child beside her now walking without her guidance, planting scrolls like seeds, each one growing into something no one could have predicted, something gentle, something just. And Hera, once feared, once fixed, now free rests beneath a sky that no longer expects thunder from her silence, only a hum, only the quiet rhythm of choosing again. So as you nestle into your bed, know this: you too can rewrite what you once promised. You too can soften the marble. You too can be the one who chooses again. No judgment here. No endings, only pauses. Only breath. Only you. Safe now. Still now. And when the morning comes, let it find you lighter. Let it find you open. Let it find you ready to begin gently. Just like she did. End of script. Sweet dreams.